All right. So, well, first off, happy Friday, Luis. Um,
Thank you. Appreciate it. Likewise to you.
right? Oh my gosh. So I will get down to like the specifics of just for you before we officially start recording. Um, I'll do the intro and all that stuff afterwards, and we'll just kind of like slide into the conversation, and then I'll go in and kind of add all the pieces to it later. Okay.
Nice, nice.
All right. Cool. All right. So, Luis, how are you doing?
I am great. I'm great. It's a great time to be alive, I guess.
It
How
really,
about yourself?
it really is a great time to be alive. I'm doing well too. I'm doing really, really well. Thank you. Um, that's actually, let's just start there. And I want to get into like, I want the audience to know a lot more about you and what you're up to. You're this phenomenal entrepreneur and um, a real supporter of people in business. And but you mentioning this, that it's really a nice time to be alive. You also are a man who is incredibly outspoken about things and passionate about things. So,
Yes, yes.
great time to be alive. Why?
Hey, every day above ground is a good day. Just being thankful for, where I came from, where I'm going. So just,
Mhm,
opportunities that I'm getting and having and being able to help entrepreneurs and business folks. And,
mhm.
it's a great ride. I mean, it can be a stressful ride, but a great ride. It's a little different than being like a solopreneur
Yeah.
or even like just working on your company, but your company is actually dealing with other companies and other founders. So it's a
Mhm.
different dynamic that you have to take on,
Yeah.
especially when you're an introvert like me. So,
You're an introvert.
oh yes, extremely. Oh yes.
Wow. So tell me, so since we started there, let's go there first, just so that the audience has a better understanding of kind of what you're up to. And one of the things that I'm really excited about in speaking with you is that you're like this beautiful Afro-Latino man who is originally from New York, and you can kind of fill in the story, the blanks of your story. Um, but I'd love to talk a little bit about this work that you do in support of entrepreneurs, because I think it'll tell a lot about your story and who you are. So let's just start there if that works for you.
Yeah, so currently I'm the founder and CEO of We the Plug. So what We the Plug does is like we help Pan-African and Latinx folks through the process of building a company, primarily high growth tech startups. So um, from the moment they have an idea to when they're ready to raise their first round of capital. And so what
Mhm.
we do is we use design thinking to really go through that process. And so what's happening in the space is a lot of folks are just building, they have an idea, they'll build out an MVP or a prototype, and then
Mhm.
they'll go ask for money, venture capital, or some type of investment. And what we want to do is we want to say, hey, like you don't have to give up all that equity in your business. What you can do is actually make sure that your idea has product market fit so you can slowly build and actually gain revenue in your business. So if that one day venture capital is an option, like you will have the leverage in those negotiations. Because what happens is, what many folks don't know is that in venture capital, a lot of times the deals are not in your favor as a founder. So
Mhm.
it's you build the business and then you end up working for your investors basically, and then
Mhm.
that's how a lot of people end up getting removed from their companies, their own companies.
Your Wi-Fi is doing a weird thing. Hold on. There you are.
Okay.
Okay. So Tyler, start recording again from here. So
Okay.
what you said, Luis, was a lot of time. You talked about people getting outed from their own companies, and you said a lot of time.
Yeah. So a lot of times they do get out of the company, so we want to eliminate that as much as possible. So making sure that you have revenue in your business, making sure you know how to get customers. Because if you know how to get one customer, you know how to get 10. You know how to get 10, you can get to 50 and 100, and et cetera. So that's kind of the model that we use. And we use design thinking to really help founders through that process.
I love that. And so what you're doing is really in service to, just looking for the chord. What you're doing is really in service to entrepreneurs. So how did you get there? Like what led you to deciding that this is the thing that you wanted to do and this is the service that you wanted to provide to entrepreneurs?
Well, when I graduated from grad school, I really didn't know. I knew at some point in my life I wanted to start my own business. I always, um, was into entrepreneurship. And so, kind of make a backtrack story. I was doing things like in the early 2000s, such as selling Kirby's and, being involved in tech, back in 2001, where, I was selling internet service and, that kind of thing. And it was MLM, but I learned a lot from that. And so from those situations, so going forward, when I graduated from grad school and I wanted to just figure out what I wanted to do, I knew at some point I didn't want to just be in an office and just have a job and just go home. Like I didn't really want that for myself. And so I was just searching for community groups and, in entrepreneurship. And, I ended up finding an organization called Startup San Diego. A couple of their meetings, and then I went to their startup week. And so it was
and this is Startup San Diego.
Yes, that's the organization, nonprofit, yes. And okay. So I went to their biggest event, which is Startup Week in San Diego. And just, I didn't have any expectations. I just was, meeting people and just, taking in, everything that I'm seeing. And so, make a long story short, the last day, because it was a week long, obviously Startup Week, they had a fair, so startup fair. So basically, it would look like a job fair, but only thing it would be companies instead of, startup companies instead of like regular, traditional jobs. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up connecting that day with the person that actually started Startup San Diego, which I didn't know at the time, but in hindsight now. But he asked me, he said, hey, how are you liking Startup Week? And that was his way of spreading hospitality around. And I politely said, yeah, this is a great experience, but there's no Black people, and what's up with that? And I said it just like that. And my professional decorum was a little suspect back then. But
I don't think that that's unprofessional, Luis, to be honest. I mean, it's a question.
Now I probably would have said it a little differently, but
how would you have said it? And I'm saying again,
again, I'm sorry.
So I'm saying this because, so in hindsight, how would you have said it?
I don't know. Maybe I said,
let's think about this for a minute.
You know what? I might be capping on that one. I might have just said the same thing. So, I tried.
No, I mean, and I'm saying that because one of the things that I, just putting a little quick pin in your story, one of the things that I have learned about you is, and I met you for the first, and we didn't really meet, but I saw you speaking at one of the Startup San Diego workshops up in Carlsbad. And what I noticed about you then, and this is, 2 years ago, mm-hmm. is I was like, that brother is like, you just say it, like you're really an authentic person. And that was the very first thing that I noticed about you that stuck out for me, is that you're a truth teller. You just say what you got to say. And then we'll talk about all the rest of it later, but, because we've been friends on social media, since then. And I'm like, this dude always says what's on his mind. Like he has a thing to say. So I was just curious to see if you thought that there was some other way to say the thing.
I tried to give you something, but no, I probably would have said the same thing. And he kind of looked at me like, okay, he really said that to me, like, and it took him a good 3 seconds to get over that,
to recover.
But once he did, he was like, well, that's something that we really want to do, but we haven't had the opportunity to do it, or we don't know how to get into the community, essentially, is what he said. And so, which I understand, because you don't want to come in as being a sympathizer and
Right.
all that good stuff. So I was like, cool, I took it for what it was, and I kept it pushing. So maybe an hour after that, I met this gentleman at there was a party, and the guy was like, hey, like, you really should get involved. And I'm like, get involved in what? Like, hey, like, it might be an opportunity. And so this is based off the conversation I just had with that person. I told him about it, and he was like, hey, come to one of our meetings and just see if you like it. So I went to one of the meetings, and at the time, I have to say this because this is important. I couldn't find a job after grad school. Like, I was searching, and I had just finished working with the U.S. Attorney's Office and working in the training and development department, but I had a student position. And so after that, the job didn't exist. So it required me to be, enrolled in school. So, I was just, again, searching, trying to figure my life out. And so I went to the meeting, and from there, I ended up, like, don't even ask me how this happened, but I ended up volunteering there for like maybe a year and a half or so.
Okay.
And well, I take that back. It was about a year. And right before the cusp of that year, they asked me, they said, hey, like, we're looking for new ideas for Startup Week, like, blah, blah, blah. So me being in the space, I did my research. I wanted to see what was, the end thing. And, I saw that there weren't people like me running around in space like that. And so I was like, hey, like, at one meeting, I was like, hey, there's not enough of, particularly Black entrepreneurs, startup folks, that's running around. And, I know there are folks that are around. And so they were like, okay, that's something you want to do, come to the first planning meeting. So I went to the first planning meeting, and they basically gave me the keys and was like, okay, like, figure it out. And the good thing about that was the time that I did have volunteering, I developed relationships with people. So I knew where to go, I knew who to talk to, I knew who was doing what. So it was easy for me to, put the curriculum out and, get the people that was needed to fill in those spaces and those sessions. So Startup Week came, invited, folks to speak on panels or, one-on-one discussions. It was great. All the rooms were packed. It was great. I taught a session on how to put together a proper pitch deck. And so what happened in between me finding Startup San Diego and Startup Week was I ended up winning a competition, which is Startup Weekend. So I got with a couple of friends, and we ended up developing this product where we wanted to make it easier for folks to look for grants. And so at first we called it Easy Grant, and then we kind of like just, and this was maybe like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and so 4 years ago, and it was great. We won. People loved the idea. People were like, hey, keep going with it. And so we put it down for a while, but we just now put it back up. So now we have engineers on the team, and they're building out the product. And so very happy about that. So that's going to be coming soon. We're going to be
nice.
working on.
What's the name of that? Tell me that again.
It's Evo Grant. So it's evolution of grants. And so
nice.
We want to modernize the grant process and make it, if you go look for grants, a lot of it is just inundated and old. It just looks crazy. It looks like it's from the 90s. And
right.
So we want to bring in a fresh face and, bring new light to it, and new resources and things of that nature. So little project we're working on, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll go from there. So I was in depth in doing my research on the startup space in general. So I knew who to go to, I knew who to talk to. People love the content. And so from there, maybe a couple months after that, I ended up becoming the director of Startup Grind.
Mm-hmm.
And Startup Grind is basically an organization where, we do events and we talk to local entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
monthly, about, their journey, whether it's through a fireside chat or through a panel discussion, however, what you so pleases. And, from the moment I got it, it was only like maybe like 12, 8 people were coming to the events, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured out a hack to where I can get more people to come, which was, all right, we're going to hold it at your place of business. We're not going to do it. So before, folks were just picking out a co-working space and just doing events there. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to do that. What I want to do is I want to give the attendee a different experience each time. So
Okay.
having it in different places every month works. Our first event we had at Walmart Labs, and
Mm-hmm.
we had 60 people show up.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of people, and then I had probably no less. My lowest attendee was probably 30,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was doing real well until COVID. Um, uh, side note, my last in-person event, I had 72 people registered for the event.
Wow.
We were going to have a panel with the executive director of Startup San Diego. We were going to have the CEO of the Downtown Partnership,
Mm-hmm.
also the CEO of Connect. So it was an all-star cast, and it got ruined by COVID because I was supposed to have it that Thursday of March 19th or something. But then that Tuesday is when they shut everything down.
Yeah,
So
March 13th, which was a Friday, was when it was like, okay, we're getting ready to make the announcement. And then
yeah, and then
yeah,
Tuesday it just
done.
And I had that event on the Thursday.
Okay.
So I was so upset about that. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
of
okay,
course.
this might last a couple of weeks. No, so and then while I was so doing that, and then during that time, Startup Grind,
Mm-hmm.
they have a yearly conference, which at least like 7,000 to 10,000 people show up every year in
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley. And so me going, being a first-time director, I think I was only director maybe November, December. So 4 months I was only director, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I didn't even hold an event yet. And so I went there, and I was like, okay, I want to talk to Black entrepreneurs. I want to talk to, Latino entrepreneurs. Like, I want to know what their pain points are. Like, I really want
Mm-hmm.
to know. And so I ended up giving a couple tickets away to my friends and colleagues, and a couple of them came to the conference. So what I did was, if I wanted to talk to entrepreneurs, I put out an Eventbrite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, meet me here at this coffee shop, Black entrepreneur meetup, blah, blah, blah. And you know how every conference has an app to where you
Yeah.
can see who's coming. So
Mm-hmm.
I send it to every person that I thought would be interested in it, right?
Okay.
And my expectation was, okay, I'm gonna get like 5 to 8 people. They're gonna come. I'm gonna ask them a couple questions about being a founder. We'll
Mm-hmm.
exchange information on LinkedIn or whatever, and keep it pushing.
Mm-hmm.
That was my honest expectation, because I did it at the same time as the pub crawl. And if you know anything about conferences and pub crawls,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the tech space, you know that that's where people drink and
Yeah.
network. So if you come to a coffee shop where I'm at, you really wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And so I get there, and let me back up for a second. So this happened when I first did it. It was on a Sunday night to put together the Eventbrite. So I put the Eventbrite for Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what, 48 hours?
Mm-hmm.
And so that day of the event, I had lunch with a friend of mine, and she was like, yo, how many people do you think are going to show up to this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just I'm just, testing the water to see what, I'm just, we'll see. But it was my way of doing, in design thinking, we call it customer discovery. So basically figuring out, what the customer wants, what the customer needs. So I did that, and I was amazed that like 80 people showed up in the coffee
Wow.
And
why is that? Why do you think so many people showed up?
because a lot of these conferences didn't hold space, and this is obviously in hindsight now, but
Right.
they didn't hold space for Black entrepreneurs and minority entrepreneurs in general. So, it was inadvertently, I kind of took advantage of that because that was a hot button topic. People naturally want to converse with their own, see, and so I didn't think about it like that at the time, but that was, what happened. And it was a great night. We talked about access to capital. We talked about creating community. And so out of that, I got a couple of main things. They wanted a sense of community. They wanted programming that connected to their lifestyle. So for example, you're not going to ask a Black founder to quit his or her job, because you got to go work on your business. Well, how you going to eat? How you going to pay your rent and blah, blah, blah. So that, and then the cultural aspect. And so a lot of times where you have these white corporations that are trying to inundate programming for us, a lot of times they miss the benchmark because the culture aspect is not there, right? But usually they get people like, okay, we're giving you funding, but the cultural aspect is not there.
Right.
And so that's what they wanted. And so I just took that and was like, okay, this is what you want. This is what I'm going to put out and create. So during that whole session, I actually I was like, damn, I got to do something. So I got a pen and paper, thinking quickly. I created a Slack channel for everyone that was on there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so everyone was on the Slack channel. And then 2 weeks after that, a woman from DC actually got into an accelerator program because she met the program director on the platform, on the Slack channel. And so people were getting invited to that Slack channel, and I think I called it like Black Tech Meetup or something like that. And it kind of just went from there. And I went back to a friend of mine who I actually hired as a consultant. Mind you, at this point, I didn't have a job, but I still hired her as a consultant and paid her. It was like, I'm trying to figure this out.
Right.
And when I told her this, she was like, yo, this is dope. Like, I can't believe you did this. And so she was like, yo, I really want to build this with you. And so that's kind of how We the Plug started, because I just took an idea, not an idea, but more of a, took a customer discovery approach where I said, you know what, let me run an experiment. Let me see what they want. Get answers, create that, and see if people would, would follow with that. And so that's what happened. And then pretty much that's how We the Plug started and it was born.
So that is, and I'm going to put my entrepreneurial hat on for a minute, although this is a Shaping Freedom thing, that is key to building business. There are so many people who are like, I have this great idea, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. But there's no customer discovery involved or any of that. And so this is like a great example of what you can do, whether it be about business or anything, actually, to actually go out with curiosity and with an open mind and just investigating to observe what's happening so that you can build something that's really going to meet the needs of the people that you're attempting to serve. So I just wanted to highlight that for a minute because that's brilliant and it could help other people who are wanting to get into the entrepreneurial space or wanting to build anything, find out anything, even relationships, figure out what's going on out there and build to that so that you're not kind of off in isolation, frustrated because things aren't going the way you want them to go.
Yeah, and I just want to add this one thing to this. I think this is very important to the conversation. At the time that happened, I was probably in the space like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So during that 2 years, I developed relationships. At the time, I'm a director of the San Diego chapter of Startup Grind. So,
Mm-hmm.
I had clout, I guess, for lack of a better term. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say it like that, just make it sound like, I'm so big Willie, and I'm definitely not.
You had
But,
clout. You can be a big Willie. That's
but
okay.
I had a tiny bit, but it was enough for me to do that and to pull it off. And I had the connections and knowing people and relationships. And so it was a journey, and I was immersed in the problem. So it
Mhm.
was easier for me to figure out what my niche was because I was immersed in it. Far too
Right.
many times you have people that, you know, they want to do one thing and they want to switch to another, which is fine. There's nothing wrong
Mm-hmm.
with that, switching careers, but do your research, be immersed in it, understand what the problem is. Because most entrepreneurs and most startups come from problem solving. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
have to solve this problem.
Yeah.
This is why venture capitalists invest in businesses, because it's a model that hasn't been proven yet, that's being proven because there's people that want to buy your product or service.
Right.
So it's very important to be inundated with the knowledge and the understanding of and your skill set. So
Mm-hmm. It's what I hear you saying is what happens when you put your heart into something, whatever the thing is. And in your case, it's about, entrepreneurs and the experience of Blacks and Latinos in business. You have to have your heart in it. And I haven't asked you this question, but what I'm getting is that your heart is in it. And because you're passionate about it, and because your heart is in it, your results are in kind. The
yeah,
attraction to the mission, the attraction to the sense of community that you're creating, and the knowledge that you're sharing comes from having your heart in it at the core.
yeah, I mean, definitely something that, I get the same feeling like when I used to play basketball. I used to, play in the summer tournaments, back home in New York. Like, it's that same feeling. I get up, all right,
Mhm.
I want to do this, or I need to connect with this person or that person. So I get the same exact feeling. So,
Mhm.
there's no such thing as halfway crook. So if you're gonna do it, you got to be all in it. Like, it's
Yeah.
no, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so that is, getting to, if you don't mind, a little bit of the personal side or
Okay.
personality side.
Okay.
That's one of the things that I'm not surprised. I didn't know the story, and I'm not surprised to hear it, because that is the person that I see, when I, heard you speak at Startup San Diego a couple of years ago, or when I see you on social media, that is the person that I see, this man who speaks his truth, just like you saying, hey, you don't have Black people in this thing. You may want to get some Black people in this thing, or,
Yeah.
and it's out of that you've been able to build this community that you're building, and the service that you're providing, and this education for folks around the experience of being supported through venture capitalism or anything else, venture capitalists, excuse me, or anything else. There's this, that is what I see and what really resonates. And that is, you speak the thing, you speak the thing. And so often people are afraid to do that. And when you're afraid to do that, or when you choose, whether you're afraid or not, when you choose not to do that, you miss the boat. And there's so much change that can happen when people are speaking the truth. And so I commend you for that. I commend you for being a Black man, a Black Latino man who has chosen to walk a path of telling the truth and speaking your truth. There's something to that. And it's, it takes incredible courage and confidence and all of that.
Appreciate that. There's it's funny because, like, in the space I'm in, like, believe it or not, there's plenty of, like, guys like me that's in the space.
Mhm.
But let me rephrase that. There's plenty of Black men in the space.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them don't share the same experiences I've had. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I wasn't Ivy League educated. You know, I didn't go to, an HBCU or, come from that side of the fence. Like I just didn't. And
Mm-hmm.
so, the way I talk, the way I carry myself, like, it's different than my colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
So that allowed me to stand out just off of merit alone.
Mm-hmm.
And, saying the things that I've said, um, sometimes it can be it's challenged, which I
Mm-hmm.
understand because people are not used to hearing um, certain things. It's kind of like the go along, get along crew. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm just gonna just not ruffle the feathers and shake the fence. And I'm just not necessarily like that. That's just not my personality. So, uh, but everyone is different. So it is what it is.
The go along, get along crew. And again, like you said, no shade there. And um, nothing changes. When you go along to get along, in my opinion, if you know something different, it's like that whole, like, if you see something, say something thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing in all aspects of life. If you go along to get along, you are essentially contributing to a problem. If you go along to get along, you are part of, you're making the, you could, let me change that. You could have incredible impact in life if you choose to have the courage to speak and to say the truth about what's going on. And that's true in business, as you've just described. It's true in relationships with people, and it's true in families and any situation. Speaking the truth is the way things change, you know. And again, that's one of the things that I have watched you do and have also admired about you, because you get out there and you're just like, listen, if you're not working, don't complain. You're like, get out there and do the thing. And people need to hear, the hard truth sometimes. It's one thing to, to tell a person, you're fantastic and everything you do is great and blah, 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 or I don't want to like ruffle feathers, so I'm not going to say anything. That's cool. But, there's nothing to that. There's nothing to that.
Yeah.
So, choosing to not just run with the pack, but to really stand in, the magnificence of the kingdom that you own, whatever that is, there's, you're a role model.
Yeah,
And I,
but you can't fake that funk. Like you can't. That's not something that can be like fake because that's something that you have to maintain 24/7. It has to be
yes,
in you. And so,
yes.
I was raised in that fashion. I have a family that if you got thin skin, good luck.
I
Good
get that.
luck. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, my mother is opinionated, my father is opinionated, my uncle is opinionated,
Mm-hmm.
my sisters are opinionated. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have a rough life, and on top of that, we grew up in Brooklyn, right? So you better not like complain about certain things or be thin skinned. Like it's gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
long life for you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's funny. So I'm actually from Brooklyn also. And that was again one of the things I was like, I know like a New York voice when I hear one, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I didn't realize at the time that, because sometimes, one of the things about the Northeast is that people just say what they have to say. And, in other parts of the country, people would cringe at it because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you saying, what are you doing? But there is something to speaking, the difference between speaking truth and just being nasty for the sake of being nasty, or not owning your own shit, you know, um, and throwing your shit on somebody
Yep.
else,
Yep.
So there's love in that, when you can sit down and have a conversation with someone from your heart and tell them the truth without tearing them down to nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And so I think I hate to keep going down this road, but there's a lot of people that have been lied to about how the world really works. And the world doesn't owe you or I understanding, as
Right.
harsh as that may be. And life is what it is. And so, I just had this conversation with somebody the other day about double standards. Someone said, "Oh, it's okay, for guys to wear do-rags, but not women to wear bonnets." And it's the same thing. And my reply was, well, there's double standards in both men and women. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, and if I said, oh, you know what? Yeah, for the rest of my life, I want my woman to take care of me. Like, if I post that right now on social media, like, I will get killed. You know what I'm saying? So it's double standards for everyone. So, I mean, it is what it is. So
you're talking, just because you mentioned it, bonnets and do-rags inside or outside? What are we talking about?
Outside.
Outside. Okay.
Outside in public, like if you go into the store or something.
Okay.
I mean, I don't do that now. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't do that anymore. I don't do that.
You're a former do-rag holder?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. All day, every day. I'm not going to sit here and lie about that. I just don't do that anymore. I'll put on a hat or, that, whatever, a hoodie. But, yeah. So.
Yeah. I think I agree with you on a more serious note about the double standard thing. And I think sometimes people create these groups and create different rules for people within those groups. And that is perpetuating a problem, and, I'm not going to get into the I'll take care of you forever. I don't really know what you mean by that. I won't go too deeply into that unless you want to talk about it. But I will say that.
No, but I'm just saying, like, if I was to say that, I don't believe that. But if I was to say that and mean it, it's gonna be a 5-star. It's gonna be a what? Like, grown ass man.
What are you talking about? Yeah, I get that. I get that.
And one of them will say, well, you get to do it and it's socially acceptable. They're not gonna want to hear that. Nobody's gonna want to hear that.
Nobody's going to hear that at all.
Hear that. Exactly. So.
No. Okay. I think we all ultimately have to figure out how we're going to contribute to the worlds that we live in. And I think that there is some, not getting too deep into male roles, female roles, that kind of thing. What I do observe is that you can't take a sense of entitlement and toss it into any situation, because it's never going to work. So if you're living your life as an adult person, believing that other people need to be responsible for you, for your happiness, for your whatever the thing is, it's unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic. Now, everything doesn't come down to a financial transaction, right? It's not about the taking care, because the truth of the matter is that a lot of times we get into relationships because we want to be taken care of in some way, right? If I'm in a relationship, I want my man to take care of me, and I'm going to take care of him, so it's not all about dollars and cents. It comes down to how people are showing up to the situations that they're in. Are you showing up 100% and leaving room for the other person to show up 100% so that you can wind up with more than you had before, whether it be, in a romantic relationship, whether it be in a friendship or in your family, when people allow themselves to be, when people marginalize the commodity of our interaction, our emotional interactions, then you wind up with less of everything and nobody benefits. So if you're walking through life I just need to find somebody, whether you're a dude or a woman, if you're a man or a woman and you're walking around looking for somebody to save you from doing the work that you need to do for yourself, you're screwed in more ways than one. It ain't gonna work.
Facts. And then on top of
That's
that,
all I'm saying.
That entitlement is actually transitioning over to the space I'm in. Like, because now, and I'm just talking about our own people, like being entitled. And it's like I hear things such as, we deserve to get funding because like we obviously suffered over 400 years. Like, I get that part. That is reserved for fundamental human basic rights. All day. I am with you all day. We can I'm behind you. When we're talking about business and VC, like that's something that has to be earned. Like, you got to put in the work, you got to prove yourself in the market. And you get these folks that, oh, they don't want to give us money because we're Black. And it's like, no, they're not giving you money because we're your customers. Like,
right. What are you doing?
Like, what are you doing? Like, so people want to see that. So, entitlement is just, it's rampant in today's society. So
it is. And for a lot of people, about a lot of things, and I think, again, that's one of the things that I noticed, perusing, your handles and kind of observing you over these last couple of years. I love that you speak to that. I love that you say, and you tell the truth, which is, you want to be an entrepreneur, you've made that decision. Don't just sit in a corporate environment looking out at the grass being greener on the other side without taking and kind of have this kind of wishful thinking about having a life where you have the flexibility or the finances or whatever the thing is, without understanding the work that goes into that. Right? There's a work ethic that's involved there. There are sacrifices that are made. It's not, you don't just because someone's smiling, on doing a selfie on Instagram does not mean that they are successful at what they're doing. There's a lot that's going into that smile. There's a lot that's going into that ability to go to the beach in the middle of the day or whatever the heck it is that person is doing. And I think that one of the fallacies that is perpetuated, is, oh, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and I'm going to make it in 6 months. I'm going to be making $1 million. And that's bullshit. That just is not the truth. It is not. It is not.
Definitely not the truth.
Yeah. And you can have great things happen. Like, there are things that are key, like having your heart in it, and really immersing yourself in discovering what's happening around you so that you can build something. And it doesn't have to be hard, right? But it's simple, but it doesn't have to be hard. And there is going to take some work. There's going to take, some effort on your part and action. Because without action, it's just like you sitting around, talking. Yeah. 3 tips for any new entrepreneur.
3 tips. Tip number 1, understand. My train of thought. I was about to say self-understanding. No, have self-awareness.
Okay.
Self-awareness is key. Knowing who you are. Because if you know who you are, then most likely you know what your skills are. If you know what your skills are, then you know what you can and can't do. So self-awareness, it falls under many things, but that's kind of the main thing. So self-awareness, always be the student, learning, and and always, and I mean always, I can't stress this enough. Always do your audits.
Do your what?
Audits.
Your audits. Explain that.
So audit yourself, audit the company, or they, what you want to do. Because things change, life change. And so if your heart is not in it, then it's, you're no use to anyone. So now,
so by audits, you're saying like check yourself as you're going through the process. Like, how are you feeling? Is your heart still in it? Is this something you want to be doing? Is this the right work for you, or is this something that someone else has told you you should be doing? Like, are you in it or not?
Exactly, because
Okay.
what happens is that, especially nowadays, everyone is in love with the fact that they can run their own business. Like it's this factuation that, you know, we get to go to PB and we get to like sip on mimosas every day and, living a life. It is not like that. I don't know who put that together, but that
It
is
is not for the faint-hearted. Hear that.
No. And what the pandemic actually showed was who was real and who was not, because it was very, very easy for people to just say, you know what, F it, like I got a lot of stuff going on, I'm trying to figure this out. But there were people that were consistent, persistent in what they were doing in their business. Even if they did lose employees, even if they did lose money, they found a way to bounce back and, contribute to their business any way possible. So that's one thing the pandemic showed. So, but that falls under all of it. So.
Okay. And then a tip, even if it's just one, for an entrepreneur who's in it, who's doing all the things that you just mentioned, but is tired. What do you suggest for them?
Ooh, take breaks. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, I don't care if it's 30 minutes. I don't care if it's an hour, a day. Like, have a day where it's just like, you know what, I'm going to just be a couch potato, or I'm going to, do something. Now, me personally, like, I struggle with that. You know what I mean?
I'm like, that sounds great. I try, really.
I struggle with that. But how I mask it, right, it's because, now I have fitness goals and I'm trying to lose weight. So, I'll go to the gym in the morning every day. Sometimes I'll do twice a day. And then, I'll go on Saturday morning and then I'll go, play a little basketball. And then that'll kind of get my mind off of things. And then I'm right back to, doing what I need to do. And so take breaks when you can. It might be half a day. It might be an hour. It might be 30 minutes. But take breaks as much as you can, so that way you have the energy to push forward. It's better for you to just, if you're, let's say today you're inundated with meetings, right? From like 9 to 1, right? And your next one is at 1:30. As at 1 o'clock, instead of just checking emails for 10 minutes, if you're in the house, hey, go in the room and close your eyes for 30 minutes. Or, if you do something else or play around on YouTube or something. So it's time to take that meeting. You allow yourself, you're allowed that. So that's what I do. So
give your brain a rest, because if you can't, you want to kind of open and expand. And that's really, being an entrepreneur is also a very creative process, endeavor. And so you really want to give your brain and all of you a moment to just kind of stop so that you can expand your capacity to receive new downloads and new information and new strategic thinking and that kind of thing. I have another question for you about truth telling. So it seems it seems that you that's your thing, right? That's your jam, and it comes very naturally to you. There are some people who, going back to what we were talking about before, people who kind of go along to get along. What is your tip for a person for whom that isn't, something that comes natural? Like the person who's not comfortable speaking the truth. Do you have any tips for that person?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Like,
Like, because here's the thing, a lot of people hear like the what they're supposed to do, right? And one of the things that I try to do is like what you're doing with the businesses that you're in and with We the Plug. It's all about showing how, right? And so sometimes we do things because it just comes naturally to us, right? And the folks who want to be in that space and who want to leverage you as a role model are helped sometimes by knowing like, okay, let's break down the strategy that you use for speaking the truth.
Well, that's easier said than done. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to break this down. And
yeah.
So it's about a mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you're dealing with, so first off, let me just say this because I think it's important. Obviously, I'm Afro-Latino. So there's a lot of things that even myself, even growing up in East New York, Brooklyn, Linden Projects, there's some things that I'm not privy to because I'm technically not African American, and, as the numbers say, almost 80% of Black folks that are born in America are born to a single parent household. I'm not in that percentile, you know? And so there's a lot of things that even to this day, I'm not privy to.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parents taught me a certain way. I only knew like, go hard, go
mm-hmm.
home,
mm-hmm.
like that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
So I'm very, as an adult now, it's funny because I was a rebel younger, but now I'm a very, old school kind of guy, like,
mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? In many ways. And so taking that, not understanding that the key to the community a lot of times is the church, right?
Mm.
And, and that's one of the things that I struggle with, living here, like San Diego, where it's like, okay, that's nice, but let's put some actual like common sense to what we're doing. And
mm-hmm.
so I would go on these rants about I don't understand. And it took me a while to, and other people were like put it to the side and was like, hey, look, like let me put out the whole picture for you. And once I understood the whole picture, I was like, oh, I get it. I still don't agree, but I get it. Like
mm-hmm.
I have a much more understanding of how the community works. And
mm-hmm.
so I would joke and say, hey, if I want to do good community work, like I'm not going to go get permission from folks at the Bayview Church to do that. Like,
mm-hmm.
and so people would laugh, but the running joke is that's what people would do. They would go to the church and
mm-hmm.
they would ask permission for the community to do X, Y, and Z. I don't
mm-hmm.
believe in that. Like, just go and do it, do the work, and if it's good, people will eventually recognize you and show up, etc. So a lot of that I had to understand, and so I would run into roadblocks.
mm-hmm.
And so since I didn't know how to be like not around the bush, just to say it straightforward, I tried to get involved with the local organizations, et cetera, and I was hitting a wall.
mm-hmm.
And so not understanding that. So I noticed a lot of people, they like the indirect conversations.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not used to that. I'm used to just tell me what it is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I can deal
mm-hmm.
with it. And
mm-hmm.
once I understand it, then I know how to move.
Right.
So I work much better that way than working in mystery and So I hope I answered your question, but
I think we're getting there.
I don't know if like I really don't know how to answer that question because that's the only way I know how to be. And people that they're not, I guess, privy to really the truth or I don't know. I don't know.
So
maybe you can help me out. I don't know.
Okay, because you actually raised another point that I want to get back to. All right, so how about this? So you're sitting in the room, mm-hmm. right? And you are noticing that there are not a lot of people of color in the room. So you get up, you have this conversation with this gentleman, and the person asks you something about your perspective on the event, I think is what you said.
Mhm.
And then what happened next? So, like, what did you, was there anything that happened in that moment that led you to just speak the truth about the fact that, why did you say that there's not a lot of Black representation in the room? Like, what happened inside?
Because I wanted him to know, I guess, that there weren't enough Black folks in there for whatever reason. Because he asked me my thoughts, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I gave him my thoughts. That it was kind of point blank. Like it was like, these are my thoughts. This is great. However, there's not enough Black people here. You know, trying to figure out what's up with that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, see where it went after that. But he could have walked away. He could have been like, I don't know, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool. But it was just what I was thinking at the time, and I didn't think nothing of it.
I think that's the how. The how is, you could have had a whole conversation with yourself, right? So that's the difference between having a conversation from your heart and not having a conversation from your heart. So option two could have been that you decided, like, you knew what your truth was, you knew what your thoughts were about what was happening in the room, and you could have either spoken the truth about it and said, well, this is what's going on, or you could have second guessed yourself, talked yourself out of speaking the truth, edited it, and said, and gone along to get along and said, hey, it's all good. It was great, great. I love the croissants, and kept it moving, right?
I could have
And
said that.
then, right, you could have.
Yeah.
And then that other person would walk away having received a lie, and or not getting something that he was thinking validated, which could have been like, I don't know, what does this Black man think about, what's happening here,
Well,
right?
I'm gonna tell you the real deal. It was the manner in which he asked me,
Okay.
and that rung an alarm. Like, he's not saying that just to have a conversation. So he
Mm-hmm.
was somebody. I don't know what that somebody was. I found
Right.
out eventually, but it was the
Okay.
manner in which he asked me. So automatically it was like, oh, he's somebody. I don't know to what extent,
Mm-hmm.
but he's
Mm-hmm.
somebody. So since
Mm-hmm.
he's somebody, I'm gonna put this in his ear.
There you go. Okay. Okay.
So
So the lesson in this, just thinking about the people who are listening, the lesson in this is speak your truth. Speak your truth. And don't spend so much time over editing yourself that you miss an opportunity to speak your truth and affect change in a positive direction. And so that doesn't necessarily mean to use that time to say, yo, I hate your blah, 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 you want to kind of like, have some, read the room.
yeah,
And when you have an opportunity to speak the truth, speak your truth. When you're in a relationship with someone and they say, how are you feeling and what's going on? Speak your truth, because that is the way. You may not get the result that you're looking for necessarily, but you can't fault a situation when you haven't shown up 100% with your truth. So you have zero chance of changing it. Had you walked away and said, everything's cool, thank you, peace out, you would have had zero chance of changing. You chose to speak it, which gave you at least a shot.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the lesson right there.
Yeah.
Like, if I always tell people, if you want to know something, the truth, don't ask me. Don't ask me.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave me out of it, because you
Yeah.
ask me, I'm gonna answer your question, and you
Yeah.
may or may not like it. And
Yeah.
more times than not, people, for example, um, actually, this is a great example. So, I had a situation where something. So I have a friend, right? and she owned a company, a transportation company. And she was in talks with a nonprofit about her services, transporting kids in that nonprofit. And so the deal fell through. A week later, that nonprofit was on the news. Because they were partnered with the police department here locally. And you might have remembered the story. I don't. You might have not, but this is like 2 years ago. And they partnered with like the county sheriff's department or the local police department. Nevertheless, they took kids from southeast San Diego and took them out on the beach there. Out to I think it was either Carlsbad or it was one of the beaches out there. And instead of them riding on the yellow school bus like normal kids, they were smart enough to take the sheriff's bus. You know, the bus that transports inmates from one prison to another. So they decided to use that. Very smart. So you're gonna put a bunch of Black and Hispanic kids in there, and you're gonna drop them off right in front of the beach, you know, where these white kids and these parents, and they're just thinking, you know, these are criminals out for recess. Like,
Wow.
I mean, it was a bad look all around.
I did not hear that story.
Yeah, look it up in your spare time, and I'm sure it'll come up. And so the community got mad at the police for doing it. So they were like, how could you do this? And I was in the camp of, why y'all looking at them? What I need to be looking at is these parents that allowed that in the organization that you that you keep sending your kids to. How about looking at them, you know, for accountability? Because somebody that is leading that organization had to sign that off. Sign off.
Right.
So you're worried about, no, forget the police. No, because it was free, you thought it was a good idea.
Right.
So when I said, this is what I mean when the community has loser mentality, I get killed for it. Like, people are like, how can you say that? Because I'm sorry, I forgot one point. Forgive me. I missed one part of the story. The woman that my colleague that they were negotiating with, that the deal fell through, she had a crowdfunding campaign for her company to raise money. And she went to those same individuals and they did not contribute one dime to her crowdfunding campaign. But then this happens. So then that's why I said what I said, because you're talking about supporting Black businesses and all this good stuff. You didn't do it, and as a result, this is what happened. So this is on you. And of course, people didn't see it that way. And I'm just like, and this is why, you know, we're going to be in last place because of things like this.
What I get out of that is, again, it's more of the discovery. Like, life is about discovery. And so don't just take things, you know, and go to the easy place, you know. And I have spoken about and have issues with, I don't want to get too deep into, you know, what's happening with the police and Black people in this country or people of color. What I will say is that there are like the easy targets, and then there's the personal accountability and responsibility that we need to take for our lives, for our children, for the experience that we're having, for the ways that we approach things. And to go to that first forward-facing organization and not take a couple of steps back to say, I made the decision to just let this organization randomly take my kids and put them on an inmate bus or whatever you call that thing. And, you know, there's some accountability there. And so sometimes when we're trying to like run away from that, we try to point fingers at other people, but you got to own your own shit. You got to own your own life. You got to own your own tribe, and you got to manage your own kingdom and queendom. And the way to do that is to make yourself, is to be willing to be 100% accountable for what's happening in your world, right? You can't have your hands in every single thing, but be accountable and accountable for what's happening in your world, even when things are screwed up. Because until we're willing to do that, we're all just going to go along to get along. You got to question.
Yeah, and believe it or not, that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. Because guess what? There's nobody else to turn to. It's
right?
all on you. You can't blame this. You can't blame that. It's all on you. You're the last buck.
Yeah.
So
there are days where I'm like, oh, I'm so freaking tired, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I got to talk to that person I report to. That person's me. This isn't working or whatever. It's me. It's nobody else. And so that's what is, like you said, so wonderful about entrepreneurship.
And I believe eventually that's why people don't do it, because it's that this is on me, but I can't, that's too much. It's easier for me to say, hey, like such and such, I may report to this person, and it's very easy to do that, as opposed to just look in the mirror and say, damn, like I didn't do this, so this is why this didn't happen.
Right. And here's the thing, as I worked in corporate for a long time before becoming an entrepreneur, like 15 years ago. And I've worked really hard as an entrepreneur, and I worked really hard working for other people, and so when there's a mindset that tells you that you can work hard for yourself and have good results, and what, I'm sorry, my words are like all jumbled up in my head right now. What I'm saying is that have faith and confidence in yourself. Have faith and confidence that what you do can turn out in the right way, in the same way that you blindly take on the projects, the things that working for other people put you into, the lack of resources, all of that, the politics, all those things. A lot of people work within those really challenging environments, but then, in support of other people's agenda, and then they're unwilling to do it for themselves. So do the work for yourself.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. And that's why I get so agitated when there's people that speak upon the actions of someone else, and they're not doing their part or playing any role in the solution. Right. You tell me the problem. That's great. But what's the solution? Like,
what are we going to do? Yeah.
And too many people playing the sidelines and commenting, and it's just like, look, you're on the sidelines. Like,
there's no sweat on your brow.
Just stay over there.
Yeah.
Relax. So,
Luis, thank you. I know you're really busy, and I thank you. Thank you for walking the journey of this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you for being a brother who's showing up and doing this thing and speaking the truth, and helping other people, and helping your own journey. So I really want to thank you for that. I appreciate it. This has been a fantastic conversation.
No problem. Likewise as well.
Yeah. And I know there's, in the show notes, we'll put information about We the Plug, and, how people can get in contact with you and that kind of thing. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem.
Okay.